Today's webinar is on BIMteraction, pushing the boundaries of traditional walkthroughs. We're going to have our senior consultants, Leo Salce and Peter Marchese, presenting today. All right, just a little bit about Microdesk. We're an Autodesk Gold, Oracle, and Google partner. We offer technology training and consulting solutions for the AEC industry. We have 12 offices nationwide, and that includes 90 consulting specialists and software developers. Today's presentation will be going over BIM and game engines intro. Then we'll be going over an overview of what game engines are out there. Then we'll be talking a little bit about Unity and what exactly it is. And then we'll be presenting how to take your Unity model or Unity game engine and incorporate your Revit or 3D Max model into it. Then Peter and Lee are going to lead you into a demo. We'll talk about what type of controls and devices we'll be using. And then finally, we'll talk about publishing and sharing. Some really exciting stuff today. All right, just a little bit about our presenters. Leo Salce is an architect and a consultant with Microdesk. He specializes in helping firms implement BIM technology with both Revit and AutoCAD-based platforms and integrating sustainable design applications into their workflow. He has developed BIM/CAD standards and advanced visualizations for numerous design firms and government agencies. Peter joins Microdesk as a senior consultant with expertise in architectural technology solutions. He has extensive working knowledge of AutoCAD, architectural desktop, and Revit. At Microdesk, Peter works with national architecture firms implementing Revit. He specializes in custom training and content creation, leading firms through the process of creating standards and workflows based on building information modeling technology. Just a couple of logistics before we begin. In order to minimize any background distractions, you are all on mute for the duration of the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, just type them into the question area of the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen. Peter and Leo will address as many questions as they can at the end of the presentation. If we do run out of time, we'll provide you with our contact info so you can follow up with us. And now I turn it over to Peter and Leo.
What a game engine is it's a tool or a program that allows you to take advantage of the geometry and render it and interact with it in real time. Most people have done a walkthrough. They use something like Revit, or they'll use Form-Z or SketchUp or 3D Max. And they're great tools. Each one has its own benefits and things that it's focused on. The only real issue with that, though, is that most of them are not interactive. If you make a walkthrough in Revit, essentially what will end up happening is you're on rails. You hit play and you wait for it to finish. If you want to change things, or you want to say, halfway through, hey, what's over there? You really can't. The benefit of a game engine is it's rendering things in real time, so you can go wherever you want. Everything is going to look the way that you want. And you can also create interactivity into the objects, which is some of the things we're going to show off.
All right. Hey, thanks, Peter. We had a little technical thing here with the sound. But anyway, so yeah, just like Peter said, game engines have been around for quite a bit. And although you hear them being used for gaming development, until recent years is where you see more people kind of taking a more creative approach on how they engage the audiences. So one of the things that we're going to show you today is sort of how and why would you go sort of with the testing new ground in terms of game engine technology. So one of the things that you should know about this is that there are two kinds of different visualizations that you can approach. One through your traditional rendering that requires processing an image that you have modeled in 3D and have assigned materials and lighting. And there's different applications out there that can accomplish that kind of result. But lately you see more of the real-time presentations where you now see tools like Showcase, Lumion, and some others that allow you to cut down on the time frame that takes to render images and now be able to get instant feedback. Now, if you push a little bit beyond that and you start looking at real-time presentations with quality that resembles the same photorealistic imagery that you get from programs like 3 Studio Max and Maya, you're now talking about interactivity that he allows to go beyond just your regular preset path walkthrough and engage the audience in a way that traditional games interact with people. where you can now not only use different devices to control your path, but also interact with the content in the scene. And when by interacting, I'm saying that anything that you can touch or pretty much have a model in the scene can be used to trigger some kind of reaction to an action. So among the different things that you can see as a benefit to using gaming engines is beyond real-time visualization that you have available today, you can add interactivity to the presentation. And that's something that typically would take a little bit of effort if you were to do it without a game engine tool, and would require probably scripting and add-ons. The other thing is the flexibility in combining assets. So think of a game engine as a platform to bring everything in it. So not just the models, but also any other things such as textures, sound, videos, lighting, and have actions that are going to be triggered by combining these assets. And also, I'd say one of the biggest benefits is the way that you output that presentation. Typically, on a traditional rendering or an animation, your output will be a video that you can play back on a platform, whether it's web-based or on a media player. But with the game engine technology, it goes beyond that because you can publish directly as a web-based viewer, or even better, as an executable file that no one requires any type of software installed on their machine, so they're able to access it. And I'll show you a couple of examples in a minute. And beyond that, you can, if there's licensing involved in the middle, you can even publish to game platforms, video game platforms like Xbox or PlayStation and so forth. So I'd say other nice benefits to it is the creativity and the ability to have a first-person versus third-person perspective views. So you can have that kind of environment just like you play, traditional video games. And I'd say in regards to the game engine platform, over the years they have become more accessible to people that have no knowledge in terms of programming or any scripted knowledge. So, and now the ability of the format compatibility to be able to work with tools like Revit or even production tools like AutoCAD and so forth, it opens the doors to a more direct workflow. So in terms of game engines, if you Google and look for what game engines exist today out there, there's actually quite a lot. And again, every day there's new game engines that get developed typically to produce one complex game. But on this particular presentation, we're going to focus on Unity, which is one of the most popular. And another reason that we focus on it is because it's free. It has a free version and a licensed version that has some extra features, sort of like SketchUp, where you have the free and the pro, but there's pretty much anything you can do in the free. There's only some limitations for the pro. This is a list of the free, actually the game engines that we kind of picked from a list that have a free version that you can download today and start testing. Another reason that we chose Unity is because it's very simple in terms of learning curve. It doesn't require as much knowledge as some of these others. Again, there's things that all of them have great, and there's things that, in terms of simplicity, I think Unity takes sort of the lead. So let's start with UDK. And the reason that I mentioned Unreal, I'm not sure if anybody here ever played the Unreal Tournament game. It's been around for quite a number of years. Again, this is one of the most popular platforms, and there's about 16. I mean, there's about I can't remember how many the exact account. I think there's thousands of games that have been produced with this engine. And the reason that we mention it is because some of them you hear it recently, and you hear very popular kind of the big budget and sort of bestseller games that you hear all the time. So again, these are just a few names to give you an example of sort of the level of quality that you can expect from them. Again, Unreal is just one of the different engines that exist today, and it's being used even for for architectural purposes in terms of architectural visualization. So what are the benefits of Unreal versus the others? And I just simply list in the top sort of reasons of why UDK, which is the acronym for Unreal Engine, is being actively developed for over a decade. So it's one of the engines that has, I believe, the most amount of users today in terms of community. It's one of the most used engines in the world. I tell you one of the reasons that it's so popular. I mean, you can do pretty much anything you want, whatever you want, however you want it, as long as you know how to. And I believe the biggest drawback, and I'll tell you just in a minute, is the learning curve. I mean, unless you have a little bit of knowledge in terms of, programming and even just understanding how this particular game engine works, you may not get to produce a project or a scene right away. So it takes a little bit of more longer learning curve. It's one of the strongest game engines out there. So again, if you want to download a copy just to try it out, it's something you can start doing today. And the drawback in terms of why do we mention Unity versus UDK is a lot heavier in terms of mesh optimization. Usually the learning curve, which I think is the greatest thing in terms of implementing a tool into somebody's workflow, can take quite a bit. And the builds can take a lot of time to process compared to, let's say, Unity. And of course, if you don't know anything about the program and you're not into game engines, it could take a while to get a proper executable to work compared to Unity, which almost a guarantee. You download the program today, you go through some of the basic exercises, and the same day you download Unity, you're able to produce your first published game. So again, it's more time consuming. That's one of sort of the drawbacks, but again, it's one of the most powerful. That's why we're mentioning it. Now, to give you an example of the quality, we're going to show you here an example of a famous building from Frank Lloyd Wright, which is Falling Water, and it might look a little choppy based on the web-based connection that you have. So, but just gives you an idea of the level of quality of the rendering and sort of how you would interact with the scene just the way you would navigate a video game. So this shows you sort of briefly how some of the content, like the trees, the vegetation, is live and animated as you're navigating through the scene. So you can have elements running as things are happening while you're navigating. So that means that you can have, the trees moving, you can have wind representing, you can have water flowing, you can have pretty much any effect. And like I said, all happening while you're navigating the scene. So again, this is just one of the examples that it might not have looked that great because of the quality of the web-based presentation, but to give you just a better idea. And this is another famous project from HKS, which is the Dallas Cowboys Stadium, which they used Unreal for the purpose of presentation and interacting with the scene. Another way of conveying the message in terms of, visualization. So again, moving forward to the one that we're going to present today, which is Unity 3D. Unity is, I would say, one of the best engines out there in terms of interactive 3D content. One of my favorite reasons I use it is because it has a huge asset store, which means that you have a lot of content for free available, ready to go, without any programming knowledge. And I think the next thing that I consider best about the engine is the ability of working flawlessly between Revit, 3D Studio Max, and pretty much tools that are pretty popular among the design community. So again, it has a complete tool set. It has a very intuitive workspace and very rapid and productive workflows that can help you reduce the implementation time drastically. And of course, the cost of creating an animation, an interactive presentation. So to give you an example of sort of the level of quality you can expect from Unity, this is an architectural example that shows a model brought into Unity where you can add interactivity in the way you interact with it, and just redundancy, in the way you collaborate and sort of navigate the scene. So in this case, you can see that by selecting elements within the scene, you're going to see that you can change things in real time, such as the materials. You can change the textures in an object. You can turn the lights on and off. You can swap components, move them around, all live. So great for instant feedback and sort of that area that I mentioned earlier in regards to real-time visualization. I believe the best part about it is the ability to have things happening as you're navigating. So you can have traffic going, you can have birds flying, you can have sort of a more live engagement in terms of the visualization. And this is all as you're moving around, whether it's with your mouse or using another device that can connect to it. So this is great for anybody from any type of design that has any type of design needs, where you need that kind of feedback. And of course, the best thing is the sort of interactivity that you can provide based on whatever the needs that you want. So you can be pretty creative in regards to how much interactivity you can add to it. And I'll show you a couple of executables that we have. So again, why Unity? Because it supports as much content as you need in terms of 3D modeling applications. It's not so much of a code editor, but a platform where you bring everything at once and combine it. Now, it's affordable. I mean, it has a free version, and it's easy to use right out of the box. So, like I said, it's almost guaranteed that if you go through some of the basic exercises, you're able to produce a scene, a project that you can navigate interactive within the same day. The ability to import and utilize CAD and BIM is the biggest thing in the AEC community. So, again, you can work with Revit, you can work with Max, you can work with AutoCAD, and it supports all different formats. And he has a very, and Peter's going to talk about it in a second, he has a very large format support, and you'll see some of those different formats in a minute. And the scripting is pretty powerful, which means that not only does it support JavaScript, it has other as well that if you already know the language like C#, you can use one or the other. And again, adding them is easy. The asset store that I mentioned earlier, you can download an enormous amount of scripts already made that you can just add as a parameter to the component that you want. So for instance, you can add a parameter into a door that will automatically trigger opening or closing it. So and that asset store is one of the biggest reasons, again, I'm a fan. And there's there's a lot of documentation. So it's not really an engine that's been around for only 2 or 3 years. It's been around for quite a bit. And again, the user community is beyond 100,000 people already. So there's a lot of information out there that you can download today. So in terms of workflow, I know I mentioned it. So let's see exactly how you get your BIM models into Game Engine. So Peter's going to show you in just a second.
Alrighty. Thank you very much, Leo. So now you have an idea of what Unity can do and why you might actually use Unity. What I'm going to actually go through is, okay, well, how? So what I'm looking at right now is how you might get your content from any one specific program into actually Unity. So here you can see you get Vectorworks, ArchiCAD, AutoCAD, 3D Max, Revit, SketchUp. It doesn't really matter. At some point you have a file in a program that you're using, and there is a method of getting that content in. If we actually look at the different formats that Unity can work with, you can actually see that there's a lot of different packages, and each one has maybe different things that you can use it for. So if you're using a DXF file, it's really just going to be for the actual mesh, meaning the physical geometry, but it won't take anything with textures. For what we're going to be focusing on, we're going to show you an example of actually taking content from Revit and bringing it straight into Unity. We're going to be using the FBX format. And part of the reason is, number one, it's very easy to keep an FBX file inside of an Autodesk product and maintain all of the materials and information that you've assigned it. So if you put in things like, lights, materials, data, stuff like that, you won't lose it. You won't have to reassign it. And also, it's perfectly set up across the entire board. All these different things work with it. Now, essentially, to get from FBX to Unity, it's really just as easy. Export out to FBX inside of Revit. And then we kind of have two options. Now, the reason why I say we have two options is you can bring that FBX directly into Unity at that point in time. But what we recommend and what we're actually going to show you is taking it first into 3D Max and then into Unity. And I'm going to explain why in a second. And then once you're inside of Unity, it's really just import and then drop in the model. So now, my little example here, very quick, very simple, but in reality, it really is that easy. So I'm going to open up Revit right now. I'm showing one of the out-of-the-box sample files. So if you wanted to try this on your own, you download the free version of Unity, download even a demo of Revit, you'll have this file. I'm just going to go up here. If I'm actually in the Building Design Suite, I can just go say Suite Workflow and go right in here, and it'll automatically export to FBX and bring me right into Max. If you don't have the suite or you want to open it up later or maybe someone else is going to manage that, then I would just go to Export, FBX, give it a name and tell it where to go. Once that's done, I'll switch over to 3D Max. So I've got my file in here, I've got my materials that understands where True North is. Same thing. File, Export, and then I choose FBX. Now, some of you are probably saying, okay, well, you already exported from Revit as an FBX. Why are you now exporting it from Max? And the reason for that is because the format of the FBX, it can be read, but it will only remember all of the geometry. Because of the way that Autodesk has set up that format, if I do not come into the Max export and come down here and specifically say I want to embed the media, it will not actually be accessible from outside of an Autodesk product. So it's not, I don't believe it's encrypted, but it's just set up in a certain way that you can't access it normally. So by opening it up in Max and then exporting it again, I can tell it to keep all that content with it, so that now, when I hop over into a Unity project, you can see that it's all completely blank. I'm just going to come over here and say Assets, import a new one. And what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to say I want to have my Max Revit house. Oh, there we go. And I'll say Import. This will bring in my house. I'm going to drop it onto Project. Once that's done, it literally is, again, just a drag and drop into my view. Put that right there. Double-click on it here, and it zooms right in. And you can see how all the materials that I had previously are there. Now I'm going to insert one more asset. So this one's just the Revit house. You can also notice that it was a little bit smaller than this one. So it takes a second just to read all the geometry. Drag and drop that one in. Notice how that one has all the geometry. It has the windows in there that you can see it. It has all the other objects, the surfaces, but it maintains none of the materials. That's why I want to go through Max. If I just want to bring it in, make sure the scale is correct, make sure all the geometry looks good, yeah, I can go straight from Revit in, not a problem. And the nice thing is, because of the way Unity works, I can overwrite, overwrite existing versions. So if I made changes to the model and I don't want to have to redo everything, it's kind of like almost having a link inside of Revit. I just update the background version, and it maintains all the changes that I've done here. So it really is that easy. Like Leo said, if you download Unity, within a day you can have something that you can start playing around with. So I'm going to hand this back over to Leo now.
Yep. So thank you, Peter. Anyway, so one of the things that you could see as Peter presented is the simplicity of the workflow. Now, one of the reasons we say why go through Max is not just because it allows to, for a better workflow in terms of, getting the geometry and the material. That's one of the reasons. But I'd say the biggest thing is the ability to get the materials baked into the geometry. So what that means, for those of you who don't understand what baking is imagine how you see those cell phone video games, and the amount of RAM that you have in those cell phones is very minimum. So how do you get the real graphics, the good graphics, and everything like the lighting and the shadows to reflect good quality? It's because they embed everything prior to producing the executables. So what happens, again, is you sort of blend everything into one piece of geometry that contains the shadows, the lighting information, and the material, not just the texture as you saw before. So again, there's a lot more, and I think one of the extra benefits of using Max as well is sort of in the middle. Again, you don't have to, but you could easily sort of do an edit before you post it, pretty much. And there's a lot of other benefits again that you can implement in terms of using 3D Max in the mix. There's a new animation store where you can put populate people, add characters, add animation to your scene, and export that animation that is going to be carried over into Unity. So to give you an example of a scene, so this is a project that we worked on last year for a high school library, and just to give you an idea of sort of the interactivity, if you were to do a regular walkthrough, what it would require would be to set up a path and a camera that would just be set up at a specific time frame where you would go through and showcase an area that you want to focus on throughout that camera path. So the problem with that is that it's predefined, and once you got that video, you cannot really make any changes. So if you want to emphasize or if you want to look at something else, you're stuck. So that's where the real-time presentation comes handy. So to give you an example about this, and Peter's going to show you sort of the output process, I'm going to show you the actual executable. So the executable file is simply an .exe file, and all you do is double-click on it, and Peter again is going to show you how to do this. You can change the controllers. So if you have a device that is connected to your laptop or to your computer, whether it's an Xbox controller or you know, a Kinect or whatever the controller, right now I'm going to use the mouse and the keyboard. You can assign that. You can control the quality, so you can see what the screen resolution is going to be within the screen that you're working on, and then you can say if you want to have it as a separate standalone window or not. And what I like about this is the quality level. So what that means is when you open it the first time around, it gives you a recommendation, but you can say, well, you want to, depending on your graphic card, you want to play faster, so it generates the graphics you know, in a smoother way. And it goes from fast to simple, good, beautiful, and fantastic. So again, it depends on your graphic card. So this will really determine the quality that you see on your scene. Anyway, so I'm going to make it beautiful. I'm going to play and see how easy it is to navigate the scene. So this is the same library you saw a minute ago. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my keyboard to sort of navigate around. And again, this is the way I have it configured. The one thing that you should know that you can do is add this level of interactivity that I mentioned before, such as, you see that door right here? I can actually go here, click on it. Oops, lost my window here. I can actually go here and click on it and move it around, open the door, close the door. I can move the lighting that you see here and, you know, dump things around. I can go down, I can zoom in, and let me show you, for example, how interactive can things get here. So let's say right here I don't want to make you dizzy, so let me just zoom in into this area. So if you see, I have furniture that I can now click on and move around and start sort of interacting with it. And I can click on the light switch here and turn that light off by simply clicking on it. So it's very, very easy to start working with your elements and adding that kind of interaction that I mentioned earlier. So how do you do that? Very simple. All you have to do is similar to how BIM works in terms of parameters that are added to the elements, you would add a script, which again can be pre-configured, and you can download quite a bit already pre-made. And those come with specific properties that will make the element interact by triggering based on a click. For instance, if you click on the light, it will turn it on. If you click on it again, it will turn it off. Something like this, for somebody that doesn't know programming, again, it's going to take you no time because there's a huge library on the asset store, which I'm going to show you in a minute, that you can download and simply drag and drop and apply to the elements. So again, very cool. You can even visualize things sort of aerial, and then start like turning things on and off here, just like if you would, you know, interact with the lighting specifically. So this is just one example. Now, another example, because this is not only applicable to interior designers and anybody that works with architectural design. I mean, although it's very applicable, you can even use projects from Civil 3D or models that come from, you know, a surveyor. As long as it's in 3D, you can now add interaction. So this is an example of AIM. So this is sort of like the infrastructure modeler version of the web-based option, where we exported a model in 3D of the neighborhood. This was all done in infrastructure modeler, and then we simply added the car, which again, you can even download libraries. And we added one extra feature, which is sound that is triggered by hitting an area. So if you notice, highway to the danger zone right here. Again, you need to know how to drive first. But this is actually so fun to try out. So again, this car, you can actually download it for free. And it has already everything embedded in it. And this is a neighborhood from Infrastructure Modeler. So again, this is another example of how you can use the scene and how you can interact with the objects. Just to give you a couple more just before we move on, the house that Peter was showing you that comes out of the box with Revit. So I'm going to open that one and see how it looks like when I navigate it through my interactive engine. So I took the liberty to just create a scene in the background. I mean, it's a very simple one. I populated the trees. I added a few features such as smoke. You see that things are animated, already preset. So it's just a drag and drop. There's a huge library of special effects that you can add to it, like fire, smoke, rain, water, that you can apply to the scene. You can see that you can see the fire coming from the fireplace. And again, you can add interactivity to the door if you want to. You can move around. With the mouse, it's not really as effective. If you use your Xbox controller or PlayStation controller, it's a lot smoother. So again, you can go in, and for those of you who know that this particular project that comes out of the box is super easy to just, go in and navigate and explore. And this is one example of first-person controlling. Now, if you talk about third-person controlling, that's what you see usually with video games like Halo, where you can now have the same scene, the same project with a character. You can even use Super Mario if you wanted to. And this is just an example of how creative you can be. It already comes with one character out of the box, and it's called a worker. I just simply downloaded this from the internet. And again, you can have Super Mario just interact with the team, go up, and same result, just a different technique. And again, you can easily just navigate and add your soundtrack if you wanted to. And that's another way to simply, interact with your components. So again, this is just to show you quickly sort of different ways of interacting with your team. And, going from a simple path walkthrough to something like I showed you, it really goes a long way in terms of, interaction. And beyond that, just the ability to now interact with devices, that's what Peter's going to show you next, which is how do you now control things with something other than the mouse. So, Peter.
Alrighty. Thank you very much, Leo. So what I'm going to be looking at is a couple of different terms for control mapping. As Leo was moving around, he was driving the car, he was jumping around to Super Mario, and again, as he mentioned, you can make characters that will look more typical to a construction site or to a library or whatever you'd prefer them to look like. Again, being that it's a game engine, it's really just rendering whatever you want to put in there. Now, in terms of how you interact with that space, you actually have control over all the different kinds of input. If you want to, you can be jumping up and down, you can be moving left and right, you can have it just walk very slowly. And what I'm showing is just some of the tools that you have inside of Unity to set these. So right now I'm just saying, okay, is it a joystick, is it 4 axes, where you get your motion controls from. Typically, a lot of people are probably going to be using a video game controller, partially because most of the newer ones now are some form of wireless-based. The PlayStation is Bluetooth, so you can connect it to a computer via Bluetooth. The Xbox either comes in a USB controller, which is wired, or it actually has a little wireless setup that you can use. Again, plug that into your desktop or laptop or whatever, and you can actually use that to control it. And you can see how many different buttons you actually have here that you can set things up to. So think of it this way. You're walking around a building or on a site, and maybe you use the triggers to control the time of the day. So you can actually see what happens as the sun comes up and goes down. And you can play around with shadows. The different buttons can turn on and off different lights. They can open or close different doors. It really just depends on how far you'd like to take your modeling. Now, different examples of control could be one right here, that little thing underneath the hand called leap. So essentially, that's reading the exact location of all your fingers in space. So you can sort of reach out and just move around. Then you have things like this, the steering wheel that Leo was using for driving the car. You can also utilize the Kinect. Again, we actually showed this at AU where it was actually reading my body language to control where you were inside of a building. Then you also have tablets and mobile devices. Again, one of the benefits of using Unity is you don't have to redo things over and over and over again. You do it once, and you tell it what platform you'd actually like to have it out on. Now, I mentioned the Kinect one. This one tends to come up a lot in questions. What I used for that is a program called FAST, F-A-A-S-T, Flexible Action and Articulated Skeleton Technology, or tool. And this actually comes out of the University of Southern California. All I'm really doing is saying, okay, inside of Unity, if I have the letter Q get pressed, it goes one way. If I hit E, it goes another way. And inside of this tool, I'm saying, if I lean to the right or if I raise my left hand, I want you to hit this button. So this is essentially be referred to as middleware, is man in the middle. I do one thing, it shoots another button pressed towards the program, and it does whatever I want. And then once I have all my controls dialed in, I just tell Unity to publish this. So how do I actually want this to go out? In which case, I'm actually inside of Unity. Do I want to go to a web? In which case, I can set this up so that it can be streamed over the internet. I can put this in Dropbox. I can actually put this on Buzzsaw. So if you have Autodesk Buzzsaw and you're using that to host your files, I can actually put a little web video player on there. So that way an owner or somebody else can log on and just maneuver through my site. So that way he can actually understand in more of an interactive fashion where things are. I can set it up for Android, Flash, iOS, and pretty much anything that's out there I can probably run this on. And all I have to do is give it its specific settings if I want, tell it to build, and that's really about it. So it allows me to do pretty much whatever I need. And I'm going to hand it back over to Leo one more time, and he's going to go over the different things that you can do with the Access Store.
Thank you, Peter. So finally, this is really where things get further simplified. The Asset Store is that area that I mentioned that allows for anybody with no prior knowledge of scripting or even game engine, information to get up and running, pretty much with no effort. Again, it's almost like going to the App Store for either Google or even Apple and downloading apps. So, but the way it works for Unity is you have either free version options, you have some cheaper options, and there's some that are sort of a little more expensive, but depends on the goal. So for instance, you have things that are categorized in terms of, are you looking for models already made? Are you looking for components that already have information in them? To give you an idea, these are a few assets that are available. Some of them are free. So this is a terrain asset that comes with a huge library of vegetation. So depending on the quality that you're expecting in terms of, do you want a tree that already is moving and has the wind information embedded, that has controllers that can define, the parameters of the speed and so forth, or even the quality of the, the elements like grass. Unity comes with a very large library out of the box. So you can start populating trees, you can start populating, grass and rocks and vegetation around it. But let's say you want to download people, you want to download cars that already have, controllers. So this is where the Asset Store becomes pretty useful. And again, it's depending on how much effort you want to save in certain things. The good news about having some of the content is that there's competition. So that you'll see that there may be the same element. Let's say you're looking for vegetation, 5, 6, assets, components that are being sold, from different price ranges. And a lot of them are free, like I've mentioned. So for instance, if you're looking for specific trees that are, tropical, and you're looking for components that already have information embedded, like maybe controllers for the materials and so forth, you can download them here. This is one example of one of the components that is called the Road and Path Tool. Is a feature that allows for you to simply sketch on top of the terrain, and it will automatically create a road with markings and everything in it. Same thing for river. So this one is for free as well. So you can easily just define a path by simply drawing the area where you think the water is going to flow, and you already have the controllers for, controlling the speed of the water, the waves of the water, the color of the water. So this is great. I mean, if you just look for one component, let's say water, you're going to get a ton of results. And depending on the level of control that you want, so let's say you want to have one component that you download from the asset that is going to give you, one type of water that can be turned into different things like lake representation or a pond or an ocean or a lake and so forth. So this is just different examples. Like, this is sort of the one I was just mentioning. You can have controllers and you can experience them real time. And there's a lot that comes out of the box again. So there's even a water feature that you can really control, and it looks pretty good within the Unity free version. So again, these are just several examples. There's a lot more that you can explore. You can just go to the Unity Asset Store. You can easily access it from the Unity webpage, or you can type it on Google. And these are just examples of different things that you have available to you that don't require any effort, just drag and drop. So for instance, this is another one with the car. There's actually several ones out there. This one comes in with several different vehicles that have controllers and have actual gravity and a speed control. So you can actually navigate your project and see how would it look like if I was driving 80 miles an hour, looking at it from the highway, for instance. So it's very, very cool that you can sort of blend sort of realism into something that looks a lot like a game interaction. And again, it depends on the level of effort that you want to sort of spend. So this is an example of the door script. There's several for it. And what it does is, let's say you have a door that comes out of Revit, and you want to assign interactivity for when you click on the door, you want it to be open, or you want it to close it, or you want to open it in a different way than the other. So these are different options. There's some that you can just simply place, and they will have already all that information already added. So what that means is, think of downloading a family or a component for Revit, to give you an example, where you can now have pre-made parameters that will allow that family to be controlled. That's the exact same concept. So this goes beyond, because what it does is not just be able to control it graphically, but now be able to control it in real time. So this is really how far you go in terms of, going beyond your traditional way of navigating your project and engaging the audience in a more effective way. So again, this is a brief sort of quick scenario where we were showing you some of the capabilities and some of the things you can do. But definitely there's a lot more that we skipped due to the time constraints. But if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be more happy to answer any questions. Again, there are several things that we didn't even mention. To give you an idea how far you can go, one of the greatest things that I see about Unity is the ability to do network gaming. So if you think about those games where you have split screen and you have two players working at the same time and navigating the scene and kind of those shoot 'em up type of games, think about a client and the designer working side by side, navigating the scene at the same time and getting instant feedback by being able to interact with each other. So that's that's one of the many things that we didn't mention that, again, are available also within the Game Engine platform. So again, any questions that you have, please feel free to reach out. And Megan?
All right. Thank you guys both. Really, really interesting stuff. At this point, we'll be accepting any questions you might have. So just type them into the webinar toolbar under the questions. I have, looks like just a couple of questions for you guys. Do you need a special version of Revit or 3D Max in order to use Unity?
No, it will work with any version, Revit Arc, Revit Structure, Revit MEP. I mentioned that if you have the Revit version that comes with the Building Design Suite, you just have an easier pathway or a more streamlined pathway to get to Max. And again, even if you don't have 3D Max, you can still get your geometry into Revit. You would just have to reapply the materials when you get there. One of the main benefits I was mentioning for the reason I was going through Max is it keeps all my materials. But if you don't have Max, that doesn't mean that you can't do it or you won't be able to apply it. So you don't need anything special. You can even do this with the 30-day trial.
All right. Thanks, Peter. One more. Do you have to pay a licensing fee to use it?
Nope. The other beauty about using Unity is one of the few engines out there that will allow you, even with the free version, to publish a game that if you, let's say, make money on it, you won't get license fees for using the platform. Unlike other platforms that require, if you make any kind of money using their platforms, maybe they won't charge you for the actual tool, but producing a game, let's say, that people are going to buy and generating revenue out of it, you may have to have some expenses on that end. But Unity does not involve any sort of licensing fees or anything like that. The only thing that requires any sort of fee is if you're now publishing to Xbox or any other popular video game platforms like PlayStation, you may have to have a licensing fee for producing game on that particular platform. But that's actually worked out with the Microsoft or Sony or whatever the company for the video game platform. But yeah, short answer, nope, you don't have to pay anything for the free version of Unity, and there's no fees associated to that.
Thanks, Leo. All right, looks like that's it.
All right, so we'd like to thank everybody for their time, for showing up. And if this was interesting to you, if you had any other questions, things that you were curious about, please feel free to email us at webinars@microdesk.com or to give us a phone call, 1-800-336-3375. And we'll be glad to talk to you, go over different options, if you're looking for training on how to do this yourself or just some help to do a presentation for a client. That's what we're there for. We'd be glad to help you out.
All right. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.